Welcome back to the Foundry. Well, it's the weekend, and for solopreneurs like me, that means it's time for facilities and fleet maintenance. And so I've got the 550 up in the shop, and we're just going to do a little bit of routine maintenance on it. Got the spare pulled out, wanted to check the air pressure in it. But the main thing I really wanted to do is just oil change, lube job, change the air filter, and address a code that recently popped up. Now, if you recall from my original project video where I turned this truck from a trailer park menace to a presentable work truck, the check engine light was on when I bought it, and I have addressed that initial problem to the extent that I'm going to. I'll talk about that a little bit later. This new code that popped up, something a little bit different. I hope it's an easy fix, but we're going to dig into it. Right now I'm going to start with changing the oil. Now, while that's draining, let's talk about something that has confused many a Ford owner from 97 to 2003, oil capacity. Now, I've got 3 trucks from that generation in my fleet presently, and it's been the same across the board. On all of them, Ford calls for 6 quarts of oil. However, if you put 6 quarts of oil in it, this is where you're going to be on the stick, right there at the very bottom of the crosshatches. Now, it's important to note it does not say fill in this area. It says minimum, maximum. 6 quarts is the minimum, and for some reason that's the fluid capacity they chose to go with in these owner's manuals, whether it's the 4.2 liter or the 6.8 liter and everything in between. And what that means is you are safe at this bottom mark. That is the fill capacity technically, but it leaves you with no insurance. Let's say you develop a little bit of a leak, or maybe your truck uses a little oil between changes. You've got no cushion if you just go with the 6 quarts. However, if you put 7 quarts in it, it puts you at the max. It's still safe. Anywhere in here is safe to operate the vehicle. So I always go with the 7 quarts. Not that my trucks leak or use oil between changes. I had just found, especially if I'm making a road trip or something of that nature, it's just added insurance. I don't have to worry about going below the minimum and causing damage to the engine. Now, 7 quarts sounds like a lot of oil, especially for like a 4.2 liter. But I have run 7 quarts in my 4.2 for 22 years without issue, no failures, no seal failures, nothing of that nature. So why did Ford choose to spec the minimum fill level as opposed to the maximum, or maybe even somewhere in between? Well, I don't know. You'll have to ask them. As for the oil itself, I got conflicting information there as well as far as what grade went in the V10. Since I don't have an owner's manual to the truck, I'm just looking online. Some people say 530, some people say 520. My F-150 explicitly calls for 520, but there's such a little difference between those 2 grades. I think you'd be fine with either one of them. Now, I'm in a particularly warm climate, so I'm opting for the 530 in the F550. And for the filter, I'm going with Motorcraft 2. I just generally use Motorcraft products on Ford vehicles. It just makes sense to me, and I've owned them for many, many years, and I've had very few problems with the engines or transmissions or anything else. So that's my opinion in a nutshell on those issues. Let me know what you think in the comments about your experience, especially if you have one of these old Fords. Now that we're all serviced up, let's talk codes for a second. I'm about to scan it. This is just your average code reader you can get at the parts store or online. They're relatively inexpensive for OBD2 vehicles and pretty handy. All right, the first code is a P0443, and that's Evaporative Emission System Purge Control Valve Circuit. That's the new code that popped up recently, and that's what I'm going to try to address here in a second. The second code is O2 sensor heater circuit bank 2, sensor 1, that's a P0155. And I've addressed that one already to the extent that I'm going to. If you recall, like I said in that initial project video when I bought this truck, check engine light was on. That's the code that was present. So first thing I did was check the wiring. It's a circuit failure. So check the wiring, check the plugs on the wires for any damage. Couldn't find anything. Check the fuses, they all look good. Just as a last ditch effort, I threw the parts cannon at it, went ahead and replaced the O2 sensors with some high quality units. Still didn't fix it. So I've about narrowed that down to something in the wiring in the main loom. Possibly a computer issue, but here's the deal. I'm experiencing no drivability issues. The fuel mileage hasn't been compromised. The truck runs great. I've had thousands of pounds behind this truck. It does good. Really the only adverse effect of this is the check engine light's on, and that's bothersome, but you know, it's not a big deal. So I decided just to I'm not gonna go butchering up the wire harness over a check engine light. If nothing else is wrong, I don't really care. The heater circuit is really for before the engine gets up to operating temperature. There's other systems on the truck that can read what's going on to determine the proper air-fuel mixture. I'm not an expert, but I did consult one, and he concurred with my opinion that it's not a big deal, so I'm just not going to mess with it. Now, as for the purge solenoid code, again, I'm not experiencing any adverse drivability issues, fuel mileage issues. I mean, it doesn't get good fuel mileage, none of them. It's a heavy F550 with a gas burner, so it's never going to get great gas mileage. But I haven't noticed it being anything that I would consider excessive for this vehicle. However, I thought, you know, that is something that I could probably fix pretty easy. While I was scratching my head trying to figure out the best way to diagnose this thing, you know, you have your purge canister, you've got your evap canister, sorry, and your purge valve, and I'm thinking, you know, what's the best way? What could it be? This, that, and the other thing. Then it occurred to me that there's something a lot more simple that I can check first. The gas cap. Now, the reason this came to mind is because the last time I got gas, I put the cap on and noticed even when it was installed, it wasn't very tight. So then I got to looking at it, and I determined that it's broke. You see how it's moving in there? It's not supposed to do that. It's cracked halfway around that thing. Now, I don't know for sure that this is my issue, but I do know that a faulty gas cap or a loose gas cap can make the check engine light come on and throw a code with the evap system. So I thought, you know, it needs to be fixed anyway, so why not just grab a cap? They're not very expensive. So here we have a stant. I guess that's how you say that. You have to be pretty forceful. Stant! Like that. I'm pretty sure that's the proper pronunciation. And we've got a cap here. It's not totally identical, but the dimensions are correct. It's a cam lock, not threaded. It's got the teats in the proper location. So hopefully this thing will just fit right on there. Oh yeah, works good. And I might even be able to find a place to anchor this. I'm not sure yet. I'll have to do some digging around in there. But anyway, I hope that solves that code. That would be great if it was an easy fix. So I'm going to jump in there with the little scan tool, clear the codes, and we'll take it for a rip here after a while and see if our code comes back or if that solved it. Well, I went ahead and gave it a quick wash. Service day is a good day to wash the truck. The last thing I really wanted to address on this rig was some of these boards on this bed. So what's happened is they've been replaced before, and I believe they're treated, so that's good. but they didn't put screws in all the runners, and it's not a big deal on these long ones, but on these short ones, so you got a screw there, but they didn't continue that on them short boards. So what happens, you're screwed in the center and your outside ones are not, and that thing will horseshoe up like that when it's out in the sun on a hot day like it was today. Same thing up here, there's no screws across that front line. So what I've noticed is if you wet these boards, let's say there's a rainy day, you park it out there in the rain, and these boards will begin to lay flat again. They'll relax. And what I thought I'd do is hit it with the water hose, get them soaked and see if they'd relax, but that hasn't been the case. I think it takes a considerable amount of time that I just don't have today. But the point of it was that if I could get them back down flat, I was going to go ahead and zip in some fasteners to hold these boards down, because if I were to do it now while they're all bowed up, I would risk breaking that board across there. It's very dry, and I didn't want to do that, but that'll have to be another day because I just don't have time to mess with it. So right now I'm going to take this thing down and get some gas. It is a thirsty truck, and then after a certain number of key cycles, we will check the codes again and see if our gas cap solution solved the code that was popping up. That might be the slowest gas pump in the free world. I finally gave up. I think I got like 17 gallons in it before I pulled the plug on the deal. I'd be there all day. It's just one of the only gas stations I can fit this thing in. This truck has no turning radius. Well, we've still got an evap code, so I didn't get off the hook that easy. But like I said, it's running and driving great. So it's not like an emergency, something that has to be addressed right this minute. But she's all dolled up, serviced out, and ready for several more trouble-free miles, hopefully. This truck has come such a long way from when I bought it. It's been one of the few gambles that have paid off. So with that, I'll wrap it up. I got other work to do, and then I'm going to call it a day. But appreciate you hanging out. See you in the next one.